Hello, welcome to the garage. I'm Fast Rod, and in this video, we will be talking about HVAC. What is HVAC? What does it stand for? These are all questions I'm going to go ahead and break down first off, and I will be answering. So, what is HVAC? HVAC stands for heating, ventilating, and air conditioning. Um, what is HVAC? Well, it's a giant unit, usually made of plastic, has several parts to it, several components, and several compartments in it that control various things. Well, obviously, being that the first thing in HVAC, or the full name, heating, ventilating, and air conditioning, being that the first thing is heating. Well, what is heating? Well, obviously, everyone's, heard of the phrase, oh, turn on your heater. Usually when you're cold, when it's cold outside, um, things like that. And you say, oh, turn on the heater. Well, that's heating. That's one part of HVAC. Um, Once again, well, what is heating? Heating is, like I said, the act of turning on the heater. Well, what is the heater? The heater is um, basically a small radiator inside the dash, inside of the HVAC unit, the unit being the whole um, big, component underneath the dash. Um, it's a small little radiator inside that gets hot water from the engine, passes it through it, gets air passed through that, or on the outside, really, it gets air passed through the outside of it, and therefore, when that hot air passes through it, it passes yet again through a series of tunnels that are called vents. It passes through those all the way into the cabin where, you can obviously feel the warm air on you and comes out the vents from the car, from the dashboard. Um, and that's how heating works. Now, the other part to that was ventilating. Well, what is ventilating? I mentioned some vents and stuff like that. Ventilating is kind of a contradiction. It is both easy to explain, but also hard to explain. It's a simple thing, but it's actually got kind of complicated and got a lot of stuff going on. Ventilating simply is obviously, when you let air out of somewhere. Well, the thing about that is that ventilating a car is a little bit, it's pretty much, that, but at the same time, where are you getting this air from? How is this air getting even in the car? Well, let me get there. Um, Basically, there are, if you've ever seen a car without a bumper, without a rear bumper, you'll notice, some square or circular vents, or kind of oddly shaped vents, and it usually has like a little black door, something of that sort. You know, kind of has this like little window with a little flap on it. That's a vent. That is letting air out. Um, Among other things that it does, as well as when we see cars, you know, go into water, or when there's the unfortunate event of like cars, falling into rivers, falling into lake, anything like that, and that's where that water rushes in from as well, unfortunately. But that's because it's those are designed to let air out. Well, guess what? They're meant to be a one-way door, but when you have something strong enough like water, it can become a two-way street, and that's how, unfortunately, water can get in a car. Setting that aside, um, ventilating, like I said, it's letting air out. Well, how do we even get the air in? Well, if you've ever wondered what that black area between the windshield and where the engine is at, it was very prominent in old cars. In newer cars, it's kind of under the hood, and usually you open the hood and you see that big old, black plastic part that's between the windshield and where the motor is at. If you've ever wondered what that is part of your HVAC system. That is where the air comes in. The car, the HVAC unit inside the car sucks in air from there, and then it obviously, depending on if you have the heater on or if you have air conditioning on, you know, it'll process that air and it'll either make it hot or cold. One thing that perhaps not many people know or many people ignore about their car is that there is a third option to that. If you turn off the air conditioning but leave it on the cold, you get ventilating. Ventilating, what it does is it just takes that air from the outside and just blows it into the cabin. It's not cold, it's not hot. Usually it's a few, few degrees warmer than the air outside. That is ventilating. Um, along along what goes into ventilating is another thing called sunroofs. Sunroofs or, moon roofs, moon roofs, or, the panoramic, sunroof and stuff like that. That's technically a part of ventilating. It's not just there to, oh, look, we can see outside through the roof. No, it actually has a function. And that's once again another way to let air out of the cabin. Albeit if you go fast enough, you can let air in as well. But that is ventilating. Now, ventilating, um, as I mentioned, it it basically has a bunch of doors inside that plastic part. The HVAC unit has a bunch of doors that kind of open and close in different ways. That is why the main part is ventilating on this, and heating and air conditioning are kind of not added because they're not necessarily added, but they're options. The main focus is ventilating, and the kind of, you know, added part to it is heating or air conditioning. Um, so there are different ways that those little doors inside are controlled. They can either be controlled by vacuum, as they were back in the day. They would be controlled by vacuums. Basically, what I mean is they would use vacuum. How would they use vacuum? Well, they would take air that was going into the motor, and they would use basically small hoses that would go inside to the HVAC unit to control the small doors. And whenever you applied to it, the door would either move one way or move the other, to either open or close, stuff like that. That's how they use that to do it. Um, the other one is, the very most common way that, especially these days, the most common way that they do it, which is electrical. They have actual electrical parts that kind of twist the door into place. Um, if you've ever been told by a mechanic or you've ever heard the word actuator, oh, this actuator's messed up, or oh, you just got to replace this actuator. That's what it is. It's literally just a small electrical part that will twist. You know, they come in all shapes, all sizes, but basically it'll twist the door, either one way or the other. And there is a third option for how they control all these little doors in there, and that is cables. For example, the General Motors J body cars, the Chevy Cavalier, the Pontiac Sunfire, um, various other models, and I may be missing many, many more, but those are an example I'm personally aware of, where they actually used a small, short metal cable, literally to pull the door either one way or push it, push it to the to the right, push it, pull it to the left, push it forward, pull it backward. That's how they did it, but it's a small cable. So when you turn that knob, when you would twist the knob one way or the other, it would actually pull the cable or it would actually push the cable. something like that. And that's how it works, each car is different, so I cannot say, with exact information, oh, these cars have it electronically, these cars use cable, these cars use vacuum. It really is up to, each different car. Each car is different, but those are the three main ways they control all the little doors in there. And as I was saying, they control those doors to either, you know, channel the air that's coming from the outside. They either, channel it and basically send it to either the heater, if you have that on, or they send it to the air conditioning. And that brings me to the last part of this video, air conditioning. Air conditioning, obviously, we all know what air conditioning is. It's the AC, if you couldn't put it together, you know, uh, in short, it's the AC. Oh, that brings in cold air. You always think, oh, well, it's cold air. Um, Basically, how does AC work? Well, there are two systems in air conditioning on how they work exactly. I, I'll try to keep this brief, and try to keep this as summed up as possible, but there are two major systems. One of them uses a receiver dryer and an expansion valve, and the other system uses an orifice tube and an accumulator. In my experience, most General Motors cars use the latter, the orifice tube and the accumulator. Not exact. There might be some cars, out there that use it as well, but in my personal experience, usually General Motors, vehicles are the ones that kind of do that. Um, The other system, if I'm not mistaken, is used by most other manufacturers. I could be wrong on that, like I said, but in my personal experience, that's how it's gone. Um, Now, what am I talking about? What are those parts? Well, so the AC system, the way it works is it takes a specific gas and it pressurizes it and it puts it through a small through one, technically it's two radiators in there. Puts it through a set of radiators, and each radiator does a different thing. Um, and then by changing how tight that gas is pressed, that change usually makes the gas colder. And when it makes that gas cold, that's usually where we put a fan in it, or fan, on one side of that little radiator, and we blow that air into the cabin, thus bringing us cold air. Basically, that's what it is. That is what an air conditioning system is. That whole part system is just two different methods, to kind of, you know, specifically two different systems on how they do it. Um, I understand that, that's very, very technical, but those who know, you'll get it. You'll be like, oh, yeah, yeah, of course, I know that. But in short, that's what it is. Um, Now, one thing that I'm clearly missing in here that I'm neglecting to talk about is hybrids, or half electric, half gasoline cars. Um, those, you might be wondering, how do those work? Or how do fully electric cars do it? They don't have a motor, that's the whole thing. Well, let me get there. Hybrid cars use actually a combination depending on the brand. Apparently, Honda uses a half and half system. It is like a regular gasoline car where it has a pulley, it has the belt, it has, a clutch and stuff like that. So the actual motor spins, the compressor, and it, does its thing, and it works half of the time that way. But the other half of the time, they put an actual electric motor on the other side, and that's how it works. Pretty interesting. I had to kind of look that up and kind of really get into all that. Um, Whereas Toyota actually uses just electric motors. Essentially, just one big electric motor to spin, to replace the whole pulley and belt and all that. They just completely did away with it and they put an electric motor on it, and that's how it works. Um, and they just run it off the rest of, the electrical parts of the car. Um, that's pretty interesting, but that's how they do it. I presume that Tesla and various other makes and models out there probably either do one system or the other. Um, and that's pretty much how hybrid and electric cars, do air conditioning. That's why you can have air conditioning on those cars. Um, so I understand this is a very brief video. Sorry about that. Sorry if I'm kind of rushing through things. Um, but I had to kind of push this out there so that people have a bit of a context for my next video, which is going to be, kind of theorizing and kind of exploring how Fallout does it, because when you actually sit down and think about it, it's quite interesting, um, how, Fallout could possibly do this. So yes, the next video will cover how Fallout uh, could deal with it, or and all of that. Uh, Thank you all for listening. This was just a brief video, just to kind of push the heating and air conditioning thing, out there, just so that people kind of have a bit of context, as to what I'm talking about. Um, there's a lot more information out there on heating and air conditioning if you really want to know. I, I would love to cover it in depth, but it would be a very long video. It'd probably be a series of videos, to be honest. Um, and honestly, just get out there, look it up, go read a book, look it up online. There's many ways you can find all this information, find this stuff out. Um, so thank you all for listening. Thank you all for watching. I will see everyone in the next video.